Hi, everyone. This is Amelia, and that's Becky.
Hi.
We're here for these first of 4 brief discussion videos we're going to do to accompany each week of our lesson. Just a chance for you to hear a little bit more directly from us beyond the PowerPoint and the resources that we provide to share a little bit more about the content and maybe dive in a little bit deeper. So the first question we want to talk about is pretty basic, why we personally as educators think cultural competency is an important idea to be bringing into Jewish spaces. So Becky, do you want to kind of share a little bit to start?
Yeah. So for me, I think that there are 2 real reasons. One is personal. One is the ways in which I've seen it impact the teens that I work with. So personally, as a Black Jewish person, I grew up in Jewish educational spaces. I grew up in youth group. I was a Sunday school teacher. I did multiple learning programs through my federation, and I was really, really active as a teen. And there were so many moments in which I wished that the educators I were working with had broader cultural competency. Mm-hmm. And obviously at 14, at 15, I didn't have a name for that, but I knew that who I wasn't being reflected in those spaces. So for example, people made a lot of assumptions about my background and assumed that because I'm Black, that maybe I was Ethiopian, or maybe I have Ethiopian blood, or maybe my family was like converts. It's like, no, I'm actually an Ashkenazi Jew. I was raised Jewish. So there were all of these sort of assumptions that were made that were really isolating for me. And I don't think that there was ever any malice intended. It was the educators that I was working with had a pretty narrow understanding of what it meant to be Jewish or who was Jewish. But what that meant was that I often didn't feel comfortable in these spaces that I was spending a lot of my time in. And so for me, it would have made a really big difference as a teen to have had educators who understood or took more time to figure out how I personally fit in Jewish spaces. And then the other thing is, I think we as educators are thinking so much about where are Jewish young people? Why don't they want to be in these spaces? And I think that it's related to this question of cultural competency, and that they see this big world around them and they're learning so much, and they know they're so much smarter than us in some ways. And they're doing this cultural competency piece on their own. And if they don't see it reflected back to them in the spaces and with the adults that they're learning with and from, then they're going to opt out and they're going to find it somewhere else. And so I think that having this piece of cultural competency also means that our teens are going to be more likely to want to be in these spaces.
Firm agree. So I think similarly, right, like there's my piece coming to this as an educator and then coming to this as an individual. So as an educator, I think when we look at the Jewish community, not only have we always been diverse, but we're getting more diverse because of the way the world is changing and the way that we're all, I think it's a good thing that we're all kind of getting a little bit closer, even though the world is becoming bigger. Somehow Jews are becoming part of the community, particularly in America, in a more meaningful way. We're building strong relationships, and we look, sound, act different than we did when I was a kid, when my parents were kids, and that's going to continue. So I think it's just kind of good business sense, if you want to say, similar to what you're saying, where people are going to run away from us if we don't reflect who they are, and also only going to continue that trajectory from all the literal statistical data we see. So we kind of have to adapt or move all relevant. And then the other piece for myself is actually pretty personal. I was born to an Iranian father who was not Jewish. As a child, he converted to Judaism later, and a very Ashkenazi European, first generation American mother. But never, and because of racism, basically, my father assimilated at a very young age and was like really consciously assimilated. I always knew that I was Iranian growing up, And I knew that that might have meant some like Mizrahi, Sephardic something, but I never really understood that where Iran was in that global Jewish perspective. I never understood or was taught about Mizrahi or Sephardi anything as a child. So I couldn't have seen the parallels from an early age, even though, again, my father wasn't raised Jewish. The food is exactly the same. The language is very similar. A lot of the cultural traditions are similar. So I almost, and I'm only catching up now in my early 30s. So I'm a little miffed that the Jewish community that I spent a lot of time in, Becky and I have both spent a lot of time both as young people and then as educators, that I've never, not only have I never learned this, but I've never really thought to talk about it until this point in my life. And I think learners of all ages are excited about learning about people from all over the world, from little kindergartners up through adults and seniors. So I think the more we can do this, the better.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's really the foundation of it, is that how beautiful would it have been if you had had an educator
right.
who was like, oh, I know that your family, that your father is Iranian. Like, let's think about that. Like, let's ask questions. Let's dig into that. And I think that it's one of those things that we as educators bring ourselves to the table. And so we get to build these spaces. And so that is like, I think the big takeaway for me in terms of cultural competency and why we do it is that we want to make educational spaces better than the fantastic ones we grew up in.
Yeah.
But this is a way to continue to build and improve.
Yeah. And I think to your point about your experience as a young person, right? What we're doing when we're making assumptions about our students is we're then asking them to make a choice between just kind of conforming to what they think we are or doing educational work for us as their students. And we know we always learn from our students. That's not what I'm saying that we should stop doing that. When we place the burden on a young Black Jewish woman in our classroom or a gender nonconforming person or someone with a disability to say, you need to learn about who I am and include me, rather than you saying, I want to learn about you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an exciting place for us to be going in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So we'll see you for our next video in week 2.